Hello, my name is Krista Studier, and on today's episode, I will be discussing Woodstock. The legendary music festival that was held on August 15th through 18th, 1969, on a 600-acre dairy farm in Bethel, New York, has affected young activists across the world for decades. The muddy, gridlocked area had somehow become a site that promoted peace and love, and hippies were advocating for the end of the war. Woodstock, New York had been the home to the Birdcliff Artist Residency Program, where artists and writers came to refine their crafts. It sponsored exhibitions and classes, concerts, and theater events, therefore making it a prime location for a festival surrounding music. Locals to the area, in and around Woodstock, though, disagreed with the event planners and ultimately decided not to allow the festival to take place there due to the number of people it may attract. The festival was then supposed to be moved to Saugerties, a city about 10 miles east of Woodstock, where they also received complaints and moved yet again to a 300-acre plot of land in Wakill, which was 35 miles away from the initial location. But due to the climbing estimate of attendees expected at the festival, local residents became opposed to letting the festival take place there. Luckily, 49-year-old farmer Max Yasgur lent the company his farm in Bethel, New York, to be used for the festival. Yasgur was a conservative in regard to his political beliefs. However, he championed free expression and had no intention of opposing others simply because they did not have the same beliefs as him. If the generation gap is to be closed, we older people have to do more than we have done, Yasgur told the New York Times. Leading up to the three-day event of peace, love, and music, several events took place that shaped U.S. history and increased tensions between an already divided nation. The anti-war movement was growing in the U.S. due to in large part the fact that, for the first time, Americans had a front-row view of the gory reality of war. Dubbed the television war, the public witnessed conflicts in Vietnam firsthand, terrifying the nation. Woodstock became an event where all anti-war, pro-drug Americans could gather to release the tensions of their country through music. Although the Civil Rights Act of 1964 outlawed discrimination in the U.S., hate crimes against African Americans were still common, and the Black Power movement was in full swing. The assassination of Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. at this time heightened racial tensions, resulting in riots and social unrest. The event was the brainchild of John Roberts, Joel Rosenman, Artie Cornfield, and Michael Lang. Their idea was to make enough money from the event to build a recording studio. Michael Lang had helped promote the successful Miami Pop Festival in May of 1968 and had other experience in organizing music festivals, and he was fully confident that they would have success with Woodstock. To this day, 1960s American culture is automatically associated with images of Woodstock attendees, long-haired youth wearing bright-colored clothing and dancing with flowers in their hair. Hippies were categorized as young people who embraced drugs, long hair, nomadic lifestyles, and sexual freedom. The hippie lifestyle was another factor that influenced the counterculture movement taking place in the United States at this time. Their experimentation with hallucinogenic drugs such as marijuana and LSD was also part of the 1960s movement that challenged traditional social roles. Those in support of the festival pointed to the peaceful and helpful behavior of the hippies that were so frowned upon by mainstream media. The drug culture of the 60s was an undeniable aspect of Woodstock, as many musicians and audience members were under the influence of marijuana and LSD. In particular, Jefferson Airplane's performance of White Rabbit at Woodstock became a decade-defining song, illustrating the drug experimentation of the 1960s America that led many young people to feel heads, as the song puts it. The organizers expected a max of only 50,000 people to show up, but the final number of attendees climbed to over 400,000 people. With most of the attendees high and drunk, they probably weren't in the right mind to practice the clean-as-you-go etiquette and just mindlessly left their trash all over the place. A total of 32 musical acts graced the Woodstock stage. 13 were lead artists with backing bands, and 19 were group acts. Altogether, 163 musicians performed on the festival's main stage. Some of the biggest bands of psychedelic rock made their names known on the stage, such as Creedence Clearwater Revival, The Who, Janis Joplin, Jefferson Airplane, Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, Santana, and lastly, Jimi Hendrix. Hendrix, who was already a widely popular rock legend at the time, was brought on to headline and close out the festival on Sunday night. Hendrix chose to play last, giving other artists the spotlight while many attendees waited to see him. He had the choice to play earlier in the day when more people would be there, but he still chose to close the festival even after many attendees had already left the venue to go home. The political tensions in the United States, mixed with a generation of young people defying the status quo, encapsulated the counterculture of the 1960s America, which ultimately became synonymous with Woodstock. Not only did the Rock and Roll Festival come to symbolize the counterculture of the 60s, but it also became a historic landmark with real political and social outcomes, a feat which seems that could only happen in America. Woodstock was a 3-day snapshot of the 1960s America and the population of youth whose most rebellious, countercultural acts consisted of opposing a war, listening to rock music, and living liberally. Woodstock became a platform for the counterculture movement of the 60s, legitimizing young people's perspectives on the Vietnam War, civil rights, and freedom. Thank you for tuning into Woodstock. This has been Krista Studier.